Most guys think talking to women requires some sort of magical pickup line or complicated manipulation tactics. They'll spend hours researching what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. But here's what I've discovered after coaching hundreds of men and going on well over 200 dates myself. And that is, high value men don't talk to women, they talk with women. And that's the massive difference. You see, 99% of guys completely miss this. And if you're tired of conversations that go nowhere, getting left on red, or having women lose interest after what you thought was a great interaction, then this video is going to change everything for you. Because I'm going to break down exactly how high value men communicate, the psychological principles behind why it works, and give you the frameworks you can start using immediately. By the way, my name is Austin, and over the past few years, I've helped hundreds of men transform their dating lives by understanding what actually creates attraction versus what kills it. And one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty is that most men are communicating in a way that completely destroys any chance they had with a woman before they even realize it. But before we dive into the specifics, let me be clear about who this is for. If you're looking for pickup lines or manipulation tactics to trick women into liking you, this simply is not for you. This is for men who want to develop genuine communication skills that create real attraction and lasting connections. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the way you've been talking to women has been sabotaging your results. Now, the biggest mistake I see men make when talking to women is something called the interview mode. This is when you're asking question after question after question and thinking that you're keeping the conversation going, but actually you're creating the most boring interaction possible. Now, here's what interview mode looks like. So you might ask her, what do you do for work? And then you say, oh cool, how long have you been doing that? Do you like it? Where are you originally from? Do you have any siblings? Does that sound pretty familiar? You see, the problem with this approach is that you're positioning yourself as an interviewer and her as an interviewee. You're essentially saying, I'm here to learn about you while providing nothing interesting about myself. This creates zero attraction because there's no emotional investment. There's also no intrigue and no reason for her to see you as anything other than just a guy asking the same questions every other guy does. You see, high value men understand something that average men don't, and that is women don't fall in love with your jawline, they fall in love with how you make them feel. And how you make them feel is 99% through communication. But here's where it gets pretty interesting, and that is the way high value men communicate isn't about being the most charismatic guy in the room or having the wittiest comebacks. It's about understanding the psychology of attraction and applying specific principles that naturally create the emotions women are looking for. Now, before we get into the tactical side of communication, you need to understand the foundational principle that everything builds on, and that is what I like to call the prize frame. You see, the prize frame is a subconscious way of showing that your value is greater than hers. Now, this doesn't mean that you're better than her as a human being. What it means is that in the context of this interaction, you're the one being pursued, not the one doing the pursuing. You see, most men communicate from a position of scarcity. Their energy says, oh, please like me, please give me a chance, or even please validate me. High value men communicate from a position of abundance. Their energy says, I'm curious to see if you're someone I would want to personally spend time with. You see, this shift and frame changes everything about how you communicate. Instead of trying to impress her with your accomplishments, you're now evaluating whether she meets your standards. Also, instead of chasing the conversation, you're allowing natural pauses and letting her invest to keep it going. Now, here's a practical example. When a woman asks, so what do you do? Most men will launch into the detailed explanation of their job or even trying to impress her. A high value man might say, I solve problems for a living, but I'm more curious about what drives you. Now, notice how I briefly answer the question, but I then immediately flip the script to make her invest in the conversation. That's the prize frame in action. Now, this leads us to one of the most powerful communication tools in a man's arsenal, and that is the investment test. You see, these are subtle ways to get a woman to invest more in the conversation while revealing her levels of interest. Now, there are 3 types of investment tests that you should be using. Number 1 is going to be the statement test. Instead of asking questions, you make statements and see if she picks up on the conversation. For example, instead of where are you from, you might say, you have that East Coast energy about you. If she's interested, she'll engage with this and ask follow-up questions. Now, number 2 is going to be the compliance test, my favorite. And these are essentially small requests that test her willingness to invest effort. Early in the conversation, this might be giving her your Instagram and seeing if she actually follows or even sends you a message. Now later, it might be suggesting she cook dinner when she comes over instead of going out on a date. And now, With number 3, this is the interest level test. Now this is where you're gonna pull back slightly and see if she tries to re-engage. If you've been carrying the conversation and you suddenly give shorter responses, does she still try and help fill that gap? You see, the key with the investment test is that they're subtle. You're not being obvious about testing her, you're creating natural opportunities for her to show interest and her investment. Now here's the thing though, these investment tests are essentially compasses telling you how attracted a woman is. But a compass is completely useless if you don't know how to create the attraction in the first place. You can test all you want to, but if she's genuinely not attracted, those tests will just confirm what you already suspected, that she's not that into you. So let me show you exactly how natural attraction is actually created. Now the first thing you need to understand is that mystery and intrigue are far more attractive than trying to impress someone with a laundry list of your accomplishments. This is why I teach something called discovery over disclosure. You see, instead of telling a woman about your expensive car or your successful business or even your impressive lifestyle, you let her discover these things organically over time. Now this is going to serve two purposes. For one, it builds intrigue and allows you to test whether she's genuinely interested in you or just what you can provide. You see, in conversation, this means that you're strategic about what you reveal and when you reveal it. You might mention that you had to leave work early without explaining that you actually own the company. Or you might reference stopping by your place without mentioning it's a penthouse apartment. Now the goal is not to be deceptive, it's to let attraction build naturally rather than trying to force it through impressive facts about your life. Now here's how this plays out practically. So if she asks about your living situation, instead of saying, I live in a luxury 2-bedroom apartment downtown, you might say, I got a place downtown and the views are pretty nice. If she's interested, she'll actually ask follow-up questions. And if she's not, you haven't wasted your best cards on someone who was never invested into you anyway. But here's what most guys don't realize, and that is even mystery and intrigue won't save you if you're speaking to her logical mind instead of her emotional one. And that's a mistake that kills attraction faster than anything else. Now, this is something most men get completely wrong. They think that logical conversation creates attraction. They want to talk about their careers, goals, rational topics that make sense to the male brain, but high value men understand that women are emotional creatures and attraction is an emotional experience. This doesn't mean that you're manipulating emotions or being fake. It means you're communicating in a way that creates the emotional states that women find attractive. Curiosity, excitement, intrigue, and yes, even a little bit of uncertainty. One of the most powerful ways to do this is through what I call emotional layering. This is where you're not just exchanging information, you're creating an emotional experience through your communication. For example, instead of I went to Italy last year, you might say there's a little cafe in Rome where I spent an entire afternoon just watching people live their lives. And it made me realize how much we rush through everything here. The first version is just simply information. The second version creates an emotional picture and reveals something about your character. You want her to feel something when talking to you, not just process information. This is why storytelling is so powerful. Stories create emotional experiences in a way that facts never can. But creating emotions isn't enough. You also need to control the direction they flow. And that's where most guys lose control of the entire interaction. Now you can fix this through something called frame control. You see, frame control is about who's setting the direction and energy of the interaction. Most men enter conversations with women and immediately hand over the frame. They let her set the pace, the topics, even the energy level. High value men maintain frame throughout the interaction. Now, this doesn't mean that you're dominating the conversation or being controlling. It means you're leading the interaction in a direction that creates attraction and connection. Here's how frame control shows up in conversation. Energy leadership. You set the energy level. If you're playful and lighthearted, you bring her into that state. If you're deep and introspective, you guide the conversation in that frame. Also, topic direction. You're steering the topics that create connection and attraction rather than just whatever she wants to talk about. And also, pacing control. You're not rushing to fill every silence or keep the conversation going at all costs. You're actually comfortable with pauses and natural flow. Now also let me mention boundary setting. If she tries to put you in an uncomfortable position or test you inappropriately, you redirect rather than just going along with it. Here's how frame control might look in a conversation. So she might say, I bet you say that to all girls. Now instead of being defensive and over explaining that you don't, you might smile and say, only the ones who seem interesting. You see, with this, you maintained the frame and turned it back on her. Now, maintaining the frame is crucial, but there's an even bigger mindset shift that separates high value men from everyone else. Now, this is where guys get everything backwards. They spend too much time in the conversation trying to qualify themselves to her, proving that they're worthy of her attention. High value men do the opposite. They qualify her to see if she meets their standards. This shift changes everything about the dynamic. Instead of, I hope she likes me, it becomes, I wonder if she's someone I want to actually spend time with. In conversation, this shows up as you evaluating her based on her values and standards rather than just being grateful for her attention. You might say something like, I'm curious, what actually motivates you? I find most people just drift through life without any real direction. Or I have to ask, are you actually adventurous or just Instagram adventurous? There's a big difference. Notice how these statements position you as someone with standards who's evaluating whether she meets them. This creates what I call qualifying pressure. She feels the need to prove herself to you rather than you trying to impress her. Now, this shift in mindset is one of the biggest game changers when it comes to conversation. But if you want to go even further, you also need to add the element that most men are terrified to touch: sexual tension. High value men understand that sexual tension is created through communication, not just physical appearance. But most men either completely avoid anything that could be interpreted as sexual, or they go way too far and make the woman uncomfortable. The key is calibration, reading the situation and then gradually escalating the emotional and sexual tension in a way that feels more natural and welcoming. This starts with subtle hints and double meanings, not crude or obvious, but playful suggestions that create a slightly charged atmosphere. Now, the goal isn't to be overly sexual early in the conversation. It's to create a subtle undercurrent that separates you from all the guys who are afraid to acknowledge that attraction is part of what's happening. Sexual tension is also created through the way you communicate confidence. When you speak with certainty, maintain eye contact, and show that you're comfortable with your own sexuality, it creates energy that women find attractive. Now, some of you guys might be thinking, but Austin, doesn't this contradict being authentic? Well, let me address this confusion head on. And I know it's something that confuses a lot of men, but I'm teaching you specific frameworks and strategies, but please keep in mind, I'm also telling you to be authentic. So how do you reconcile these two? The answer is that authenticity doesn't mean saying whatever comes to your mind without a filter. It means being the best version of yourself while still being genuinely yourself. You see, these communication principles aren't about becoming someone else. They're about expressing your genuine personality in a way that creates attraction rather than killing it. A high value man isn't fake or manipulative. He's strategic about how he presents himself because he understands that communication is a skill that can be actually developed. Just like you wouldn't go to a job interview without preparing, you shouldn't go into a dating situation without understanding what creates the attraction. You see, the goal is to develop these skills until they become natural parts of who you are. Eventually, you won't be consciously thinking about investment tests or frame control. You'll just naturally communicate it in ways that create attraction because you've trained yourself to do so. Now, what I love about these communication principles is that they prove that becoming successful with women isn't about being born with like this natural charisma or having perfect genetics. It's about developing the skills that any man can learn and master. But here's the thing, communication is just one piece of the puzzle. Even if you master everything I've shared today, if your fundamentals are not in place, you're still going to struggle. You need your looks optimized, your online presence dialed in, and your overall sexual market value evaluated to see the results you actually want. And if you feel like you need a more personal approach where we'll go over all of that and tailor a specific approach to you, click on the link below this video to work with me one-on-one. With that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.